Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your Craven host, Dom, and we continue our look at the franchise that Freddy built, Nightmare on Elm Street. We take a look at the last 3 installments of the franchise. Yes, there's one more film, but let's put a pin in that, and we'll get into that on another episode. Just one note up front, I am just getting over being sick. That's probably why I sound like this, although I think the mic quality is a little better. I did get a new mic, so it should sound a little better, but I should sound worse. Just because I'm still not all fully up to, not sick. So let's just start our journey with the death of Freddy and Freddy's dad, the final nightmare. Then Wes Craven, the original director of the first film, comes back to the series with a meta take on the franchise in New Nightmare. Lastly, during the age of remakes, A Nightmare on Elm Street is sadly redone. Will we end on a long-awaited dream? Will Freddy ever truly stay dead? Should Freddy come back for one last hurrah? Hopefully at least we get some answers. So now close your eyes and listen to the episode. Since its debut in 1984, New Line Cinema enjoyed significant profits from the 5 installments of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, earning the studio the nickname The House That Freddy Built. But by 1990, however, New Line began shifting its focus to other franchises like Critters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And Bob Shea, the founder of New Line, acknowledged that it was time to move on and we had other projects we wanted to focus on. So as a result, the decision was made to wrap up the Elm Street franchise with its 6th installment. Director Rachel Talalay, who had produced most of the previous films, was eager to take the helm for Freddy's dad, the final nightmare. Talalay was not only excited about directing, but also had fresh ideas to rejuvenate the series. She proposed moving away from the traditional title format and incorporating more humor, which she felt was missing from the previous film. This creative shift coincided with the airing of Twin Peaks, whose surreal and humorous elements influenced Freddy's dad. This influence is evident in scenes like with Freddy using a Nintendo Power Glove to manipulate Spencer's character and dragging a bed of spikes to impale John Doe, a moment reminiscent of a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. In the original script, 15-year-old Jacob Johnson, the son of Alice Johnson from the previous installments, was intended to be the main character. The Dream Warriors from A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors were set to return to help Jacob defeat Freddy. However, this storyline was ultimately discarded. Additionally, Peter Jackson wrote a screenplay that was never used, featuring teenagers who, dismissing Freddy as a threat, take sleeping pills to enter his world. Jackson's version also included a police officer placed into a comatose state to remain in Freddy's realm permanently. To promote the final installment, New Line even held a mock funeral for Freddy at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. With Freddy's story coming to a close, the producers set the stage for him to face off against another iconic slasher from the 80s. But before diving into that matchup, let's see how Freddy meets his end.
As a boy, he was always different. No one understood him.
You ready for it, boy? It's time to take your medicine. Thank you, sir.
No one could control him.
Go inside, honey.
But now, it's a new beginning. The beginning of the end for Freddy.
Every town has an Elm Street. Screaming while the bus is in motion.
It's your mind to go for it.
empty, and your little soul too.
We're gonna have to hit him with everything we got.
Now I'm playing with power.
We're in Twin Peaks here. It's gotta be me and him.
You want to live?
Maggie, watch out! What's with kids today, huh?
Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare.
Great graphics.
They saved the best for last.
10 years from now is how the film opens, and Freddy Krueger has returned to Springwood and killed nearly every child and teenager in town, with the only surviving teenager, John Doe, played by Sean Greenblatt, is confronted by Freddy in a dream. Freddy is continued to be played by Robert Englund. John wakes up just outside the Springwood city limits, but due to a head injury, does not remember who he is or why he is there. At a shelter for troubled youth, 3 of the residents, Spencer, played by Breckin Meyer, an affluent stoner who is resisting his dad's attempt to get him to conform, Carlos, played by Ricky Dean Logan, a troubled kid who was physically abused by his mother to the point of becoming deaf in one ear, and Tracy, played by Leslie Dean, a tough girl who was sexually abused by her father, plot to run away to California. The police find John and take him to the shelter, where he becomes a patient of Dr. Maggie Burroughs, who is played by Lisa Zane. Maggie notices a newspaper clipping from Springwood in John's pocket. To attempt to cure John's amnesia, she plans a road trip to Springwood. In an attempt to run away, Tracy, Carlos, and Spencer stow away in the van, but they are discovered when John has a hallucination and almost wrecks the van just outside Springwood. Tracy, Spencer, and Carlos attempt to leave Springwood, but not before stopping to rest at the abandoned 1428 Elm Street home. John and Maggie visit the Springwood orphanage and discover that Freddy had a child. John believes that he is that child because Freddy allowed him to live. Back on Elm Street, Carlos and Spencer fall asleep and are killed by Freddy. Tracy is almost killed but is awakened by Maggie. John, who went into the dream world with Tracy to try to help Spencer, is still asleep. Maggie and Tracy take John back to the shelter, but on their way, Krueger attacks John in his dream. Before killing John, though, Krueger reveals that his child was a girl. As John dies, he tells this to Maggie. Tracy and Maggie return to the shelter, but they find that no one remembers John, Spencer, or Carlos, except for Doc, who's played by Yaphet Kotto, who has learned to control his dreams. Maggie finds her adoption papers and realizes that she is Freddy's daughter. Her birth name was Catherine Krueger, but her name was changed to Maggie Burroughs when her father was arrested and subsequently murdered. Doc discovers that Freddy's powers come from dream demons, who continually revive him, and that Freddy can be killed if he is pulled into the real world. Maggie decides that she will be the one to enter Freddy's mind and pull him into the real world. Once in the dream world, she puts on a pair of 3D glasses and enters Freddy's mind. In his mind, she learns that Freddy was teased as a child, abused by his foster father, inflicted self-abuse as a teenager, and murdered his wife when she discovered his murderous tendencies. Freddy was given the power to become immortal by fiery demons. Maggie struggles to pull Freddy into the real world, but eventually succeeds. Maggie and Freddy end up in hand-in-hand combat against each other. She uses several weapons confiscated from patients at the shelter. Enraged by the knowledge of what he has done, Maggie tears off Freddy's clawed glove and stabs him through the stomach with it, embedding the glove's claws into a steel support beam and leaving Freddy suspended above the ground. Tracy tosses Maggie a pipe bomb, which she throws into Freddy's chest. The 3 dream demons unable to revive him in the real world, fly out of Freddy after the pipe bomb kills him. Tracy, Doc, and Maggie rejoice as the latter triumphantly declares, "Freddy's dead." Now let us move on to some trivia about the film Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, and learn some things about the behind the scenes, the production, and the actors. So first we got John Doe died before his identity could be discovered. So who was he? Was never revealed. There has been speculation that he may have been Alice's son, Jacob Johnson. In the original script of Freddy's Dead, Alice was killed and Jacob became the main protagonist. This seems unlikely as Freddy's Dead takes place 10 years after the events of Part 5, which would make Jacob 10, while John is about 15 or 17, around that age. But that's only a theory as evidence to John possibly being Jacob. And it's his belief that he can enter Spencer's dream, an ability Jacob would have inherited from his mother Alice. That would have been a pretty good idea, honestly, to bring him back. Like, even if you were to say like he forgot and like lost his memory and everything, right? And he's this John Doe character. Honestly, if you were to go back and like retroactively be like, yeah, that's him. It like ties together with the. I know that this kind of ignores, pretty much I think everything from the last two. I think Dream Warriors is still counted a little bit. I'm not sure, honestly, because I know that they kind of clean the slate with the last, or with this one to kind of be like, let's get this thing done. Let's get this over and done with. I don't know. I would have liked that a little bit better, even if you're not saying that like in the movie you don't specifically say that that's him, but if you're like, yeah, this is supposed to be him, I think that would be a pretty good like little Easter egg to have in there. And yeah, and even like that it's him possibly being Jacob because he thinks he can go into Spencer's dreams. That would line up too with like I said, like with Alice's character. But I don't know. I want to know like what everybody else thinks. According to Alice Cooper in Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street Legacy, he stated that he gets asked to be in films all the time, but they always want him in makeup in his onstage persona. He agreed to be in this film not only because he was a fan of the series, but also if he could play his character as Freddy's father as himself without his usual Alice Cooper look. And I get that. I can totally see him being like, because every little cameo I can think of, except there's only one other one I can think of, where like in Wayne's World, he's playing himself. He's in the persona, but he is in Prince of Darkness, and I think that's probably why he did Prince of Darkness, because he plays like a homeless person, and he's like, you can't. I mean, if you know what Alice Cooper looks like, then you know it's Alice Cooper. But like if you were just some random person you and didn't know who Alice Cooper was and didn't know what he looked like without the makeup and everything, you'd be like, yeah, who's that? Who's that creepy guy? Oh, they just pulled some guy off the street. Because I feel like that's how Alice Cooper looked, or it kind of looks without makeup. He kind of does look like some random homeless guy on the street. So. I honestly like that. I like that he was like, you know what, I'll do it because, you know what, I don't have to be all dressed up like you guys normally want me to be. There are two distinct nods to Nintendo in the film. Freddy's line, "Now I'm playing with power," is a variation on Nintendo's "Now you're playing with power" ad campaign, which was probably out of use by 1991 as the NES was fading out of popularity. And I think 92 92 is that when the SNES came out? I feel like that's when it came out. Because the 64 came out in 96, right? I don't remember. But then also Freddy's glove controller, you forgot the Power Glove, is a heavily modified version of Nintendo's controller of the same name, which was new at the time and heavily promoted in like as many things as they could get it into. If you've ever seen Wizard, that is just one long commercial for Nintendo. It has a pretty good like story when you think about it, like this little kid who's like traumatized by his mom dying, wants to get back to like the place where his family was like happy the last. And then Nintendo comes out of nowhere and is like, here's the Power Glove, guys. I can beat everything with the Power Glove. And then at the end, when they preview, I think Super Mario World was previewed in that. I think that's the first time everyone got to see like the first like what do you call it? Like a look. They got the first like look at Super Mario World, and then they play it in the end. And the little kid does, and that's why he's the wizard, because he's really good at playing Nintendo games. But getting off track, I just love that like Nintendo was just so big on like trying to push like their Power Glove on everyone. But like at the time, Nintendo was that big that they were like, you know what, we can literally put this in a movie and nobody's gonna tell us anything. I feel like that'd be weird now if they're like, play the Switch. You can take it wherever you want, and you can play it at home as a home console. Play the Switch. Play it. It'd be pretty funny. You just see it in a movie just shoved in there. Like in trying to think of like what like in like I don't know, like Insidious. Like, oh yeah, like the demon is like, oh, I'm gonna get you. But first let me take out my Nintendo Switch, and I'm gonna use it to pretend I'm grabbing you or something. I don't know. It'd be pretty funny. Now, this one I thought was weird. This is the only film in the series in which Freddy doesn't kill anyone using his glove, although it's used to stab Freddy himself, not to kill him, but like to open up his like chest. And Robert Englund said his favorite kill in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street films is in this film. It's Carlos's death, and I'm like, really, of all the kills that you've done, I guess. And then like the fact that like you could just tell at this point like they were just trying to get away with as light of an R or a PG-13 as they could to get this out. Because like he's not even using at this point he's not even using his gloves. The thing that starts the franchise off at the very first film, we're seeing him build this contraption that we've never seen anything like it before. Like he's got these knives for fingers, and we don't see him use it ever again. Oh well, we don't see him use it in this one, at least when it's supposed to be his send-off film, right? So it's so weird. It's so weird some of the things that they decided to do with this last film. The producers planned a spin-off film in which Freddy Krueger's spirit possesses the body of his daughter, Maggie Burroughs, and she continues her father's murderous killing spree. Obviously, this never came to fruition, and it's just like what Halloween and Friday the 13th tried to do. In Halloween, we had Michael Myers' niece, Jamie Lloyd, and we got to see her kill her foster mom, but then that never went anywhere because the next one, it just turns out they put her in. Oh, she didn't actually kill the mom. She just stabbed her really hard, and then she got put into a child mental institution, and now she has a psychic connection with her uncle. And then the same thing with Tommy Jarvis. After he kills him when he's a little kid, And then there's the copycat killer in A New Beginning, and we find out it's some other guy. But like it's very throughout the film, it's constantly being hinted that it's Tommy Jarvis. It's Tommy Jarvis. Oh, he killed Jason, and now he's back to thinking that he's getting consumed by Jason, and even in the end, it ends with him wearing the mask and holding up a knife or a machete or something. I don't know. And it ends like that, and then the next film we just dropped it. They let it go. No, because we're just gonna bring Jason back, guys. We're just gonna bring Jason back. It's like what they did with Michael. They kind of like with the Halloween 4. It was kind of like, like they killed him. Like he's dead, and now we're gonna get his niece is a murderer now. Yeah. Oh, wait, Michael's back. Now she's just psychic, and she's running away from him again. And then Tommy's going to be the new Camp Crystal Lake killer. And oh, no, wait, Jason's back. And then for this one, it's like Maggie's going to be possessed by Freddy Krueger's spirit. And then this is the last Friday the 13th. Oh, this is the last Nightmare on Elm Street. And then the next one we'll get into just completely drops that as well. It's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. That the studio's saying that they can just do this, and not that they think that they did it. That they pulled this kind of like, we're gonna do it. You guys, we're gonna do it, and then they didn't do it. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny, honestly. Pretty funny. Kill Counter. We've arrived at the first kill counter, the part of the podcast where we go through the kills and deaths in the film. In the 6th installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street, there are a total of 6 kills. Is this enough for the final nightmare? The first few kills come when the group ends up back on Elm Street. Carlos and Spencer fall asleep and become prey to Freddy. Carlos is giving super hearing, and his head exploded. Spencer is dropped into a pit. Tracy is awakened by Maggie, but John, who went into the dream world with Tracy to try and help Spencer, is still asleep. Maggie and Tracy decide to take him back to the shelter. However, on their way back, Krueger kills John in his dreams by dropping him onto a bed of spikes. Before passing, John reveals that Krueger's kid is a girl. Maggie decides that she will be the one to enter Freddy's mind and pull him into the real world. Once in the dream world, she puts on a pair of 3D glasses, and then in the theatrical version of the film, there's a 3D climax and everything, whatever, right? There, she finds out that Freddy was teased as a child, abused by his foster father, who he kills with a straight razor off screen. So that's our 4th kill. Inflicted self-abuse as a teenager and murdered his wife, Loretta Krueger, by strangling her to death. And that's our 5th kill. Maggie and Freddy end up on a hand-to-hand combat against one another. While Maggie continues to battle Freddy, she uses several weapons confiscated from patients at the shelter. Enraged by the knowledge of what he has done, she disarms him of his clawed glove. Eventually, Maggie stabs Freddy in the stomach with his own glove while she is close to him. Doc then throws Maggie a pipe bomb. After she impales Freddy to a steel support beam, she throws the bomb in his chest. As she runs away from the impending explosion, Freddy looks into the camera and says, "Kids." After which he explodes. The 3 dream demons are then seen flying out of Freddy after the pipe bomb kills him, unable to revive him in the real world. And those are the kills that we got for this film. What was your favorite kill for Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare? Did you like Carlos? That was on Robert Englund's favorite kill. Did you like how Freddy went out? I'd love to hear. Years after killing off Freddy Krueger, Wes Craven aimed to create a more cerebral film than the recent entries in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise had become, which he felt had become too cartoonish and strayed from his original themes. Written under the working title of A Nightmare on Elm Street 7, The Ascension. This premise had initially been proposed when Craven co-wrote Dream Warriors, but New Line Cinema had rejected it at the time. In New Nightmare, Krueger was reimagined closer to Craven's original vision, darker and less comical. This shift was reinforced through enhanced makeup and a revamped outfit. One of the most notable changes was Krueger's new long blue-black trench coat and a redesigned glove that with bone-like fingers and muscled textures. Although Robert Englund reprised his role as Freddy, the character is credited as himself in the end credits. And interestingly, while earthquake scenes were scripted from the start, the film's production coincided with the 1994 Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles. The team decided to incorporate real footage of the earthquake's damage into the film, adding an authentic touch to the scenes. Craven had initially intended to invite Johnny Depp, whose film debut was the original Nightmare on Elm Street, to make a cameo as himself. However, Craven was hesitant to make the request, and after the film's release, Depp expressed that he would have been happy to participate had Craven asked. Both New Line executive Sarah Risher and Craven noted that the shoot was smooth and largely free of complications. Reflecting on the experience in the documentary Never Sleep Again, 16 years later, Risher remarked, "All of the other directors had to be guided through, but Wes was the master. By then, was the master." Craven's self-referential style in New Nightmare would later be explored further in his 1996 film, Scream. New Nightmare was made to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the original film's release. Both New Nightmare and the 1995 comedy Tommy Boy were dedicated to Greg Finesca, the production designer of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, who passed away shortly before the release of New Nightmare.
Mark it, common mark.
I'm doing a film about my nightmares as I'm dreaming them. In order for the movie to continue, it was dependent on me having more nightmares. Well, fortunately, I did.
I'm a little frightened by what Wes may have tapped into. I frankly felt that it was over when we did the final Nightmare.
In a town where movies go over schedule and directors go over budget, something far more evil is out of control.
Suffered its own terror today as two of Hollywood's best-known special effects technicians were found dead.
Part of the theme of the movie is becoming like part of the making of the movie.
Can you come with me in my dreams?
I think that only happens in the movies.
What happens when the story dies? The evil is set free. Now that the films have ended, the genie's out of the bottle. That's what the nightmares are telling me, and that's what I'm writing.
This is still a script we're talking about, right, Wes?
He's decided to cross over out of films into our reality.
The only way to stop him is to make another movie.
Oh my God. The bad man's getting awful close.
You're gonna have to make a choice.
What kind of choice?
Whether or not you're willing to play Nancy one last time.
Cut the effect!
Isn't there somebody who can stop him?
That person's you.
Why me?
It was you that gave Nancy her strength.
Almost there.
Where's my son?
Heather Langenkamp lives in Los Angeles, California, with her husband Chase and their young son Dylan. Langenkamp plays herself. David Newsom and Milo Hughes played Chase and Dylan respectively. She is recognized for her role as Nancy Thompson from the Nightmare on Elm Street film series. One night, she has a nightmare that her family is attacked by a set of animated Freddy Krueger claws from an upcoming Nightmare film. Waking up to an earthquake, she spies a cut on Chase's finger like the one he received in her dream. Heather receives frequent creepy phone calls from an obsessed fan who quotes Freddy Krueger's nursery rhyme in Freddy's voice, which coincides with a meeting with Robert Shea at New Line Cinema, and he plays himself, where she is asked to reprise her role as Nancy in a new Nightmare film. At home, Dylan has a traumatizing fit about Freddy. As Chase drives home from work, he falls asleep at the wheel and is slashed to death by Freddy's claws. After his funeral, Heather has another Freddy nightmare, and her friend and former co-star, John Saxon, who plays himself, who played her father in the films, suggests that she seek medical attention for Dylan. Dylan's health deteriorates as he becomes increasingly scared of Freddy and paranoid about going to sleep. Heather visits Nightmare creator Wes Craven, who played by the director himself, who admits to having precognitive nightmares. He explains that the films had kept an ancient supernatural entity which had been freed after the series ended with the release of Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. In the guise of Freddy, the entity is focusing on Heather, its primary foe, as killing her will allow it into the real world. Thus, Heather must agree to play Nancy again to stop him. Heather catches a glimpse of Wes's script, which, inexplicably, is a written play-by-play of every dialogue and action she and everyone around her is taking. Robert Englund plays himself as well as Freddy Krueger, who portrayed Freddy in the films, also appears to suffer nightmares and be haunted by the new Freddy, disappearing when Heather tries to contact him. Heather takes Dylan to the hospital and returns home for a stuffed dinosaur while his babysitter Julie keeps watch. Julie is played by Tracy Middendorf. After Dylan falls asleep from the nurse's sedative, Freddy brutally kills Julie. Sleepwalking Dylan leaves the hospital, and Heather chases him home as Freddy taunts him. She realizes that the reality is overlapping with the films. Saxon now addresses her as Nancy and acts as Don Thompson, and her street, house, and clothes all transform into Nancy's. Once Heather embraces Nancy's role, Freddy emerges into reality and abducts Dylan to his world. Heather follows them to a hellish construct of Freddy's boiler room. After fighting, she and Dylan push Freddy into the furnace, destroying both the monster and its reality. They emerge back into the real world from under his blankets, and Heather finds a copy of the events in Wes's screenplay. Inside is written thanks from Wes for defeating Freddy and playing Nancy one last time. Her victory helps imprison the entity once more. Now let us move on to some trivia about the film Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and we can learn some things about that film, like the behind the scenes, the production, and things about the actors. The television show appearance was inspired by a real encounter. According to Wes Craven, Robert Englund and I did an appearance together on a public television show in the San Francisco Bay Area. It was about whether this kind of movie was bad for children or not. There were parents in the audience, and then kids, and the kids leapt to their feet and started chanting, "Freddy, Freddy, Freddy." I remember looking at the show host and the parents, and they all looked horrified. And, I mean, see, that's where there's, like, this fine line between, like, do you let your kids watch rated R and, like, these, like, very graphic, and like these films that they're probably not really understanding. But then again, like then you have the studios that pumped out all these sequels to cash in on this, and they toned down some of the violence enough to get like ratings, to get past ratings and stuff, like to get to like PG-13s, to get to like even with rated R, like okay, all you have to do is have someone who's over 17 go with you, or guardian go with you. Plus, it was really that hard to sneak in to these movies at the time. Probably not. But yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I know like as a kid growing up, my mom and dad didn't really care if I watched these movies. They were more concerned if I watched anything that had like nudity in it, right? But then again, it's like, should I have been watching this stuff? I mean, I'm not like, I might have been in the crowd being like, Freddy, because I really love Michael Myers. Michael Myers is my favorite. I'm obsessed with horror now. Look at, I have a whole podcast about it. But the thing is, like, some people do take it a little too far, and sometimes they're not understanding and grasping. As a kid, I didn't really understand what like these movies were about and what they were like suggesting, and what why. Like I just knew, oh, it's kind of scary. Ooh, it's kind of spooky. Ooh, oh, this guy's going around slashing all these kids. Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like, like at what point do you stop and say like, man, look what I did? Right? I feel like that's kind of what Wes Craven stopped and said. And then, I mean, one thing you could do is you could make a film about how, like this, where you incorporate that and you show like people like, look, I understand what I did. I understand what we've created. It's not, the onus isn't just on me. It's also on the parents too. Like the parents could be, and I think comes from this kind of era of like, from like the 80s to the 90s, where the parents at the time kind of were like, I kind of don't care. I'm working. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. You go pick a movie, watch it. I don't care. And it's a little, upsetting and sad when you think about it, when it's like they're not trying to engage and watch what you're watching. Although I will say, with my mom, she actually did like, she loves horror too, so she was all into it too. But like, I mean, from a lot of other people's, parents, it's this thing of like, yeah, they just kind of were like, go rent a film. I'm going out tonight. You're alone for the weekend. Have at it. Before making this movie, Wes Craven watched all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. By the time he was finished, he claimed that he could not follow the storyline at all. He further regards the sequels to be weak compared to his original masterpiece. And Wes Craven, I am completely there with you. I will say that, like, you can totally tell the second one was made kind of in a hurry to get a sequel out. The third one, at least, that's when Craven came back and wrote it and helped produce it. And, that one at least was kind of like, I mean, it still doesn't make sense to like the original one, because like the way that the original one ends is very like amorphous and dreamlike, very like open-ended. So, okay, but I think in a row, the third, fourth, fifth do kind of tie together at least. It's just, it is very like upsetting when you get like, okay, oh cool, now Patricia Arquette is going to be the main character, and then her character comes back, it's not her, it's Tuesday night, and it's like, okay, well, at least the character's still here. Oh, she's killed off, and this other character you just introduced, Alice, is now the main character. Oh, okay, strange, okay. Then you get to the next one, and it's all about her having a baby and stuff, and then it ends the way it ends, and then we get to the next one, and it's like that's when they wanted to kill off Freddy, and it's like, okay, well, what the hell happened to Alice? I thought you were going to make her the main character. It's just like, and then like the whole thing with John Doe and whether or not he, there's just a lot. I can understand from poor Wes Craven, who was like, I just wanted to make a movie about a guy who kills kids in their dreams with knife fingers, and how hard and complicated is that to understand? And then obviously, like when we talked about the first one, and the way that they, like, the studio wanted to end it, he wanted to end it, and it's just like this whole thing of just you should have just let him end it the way he wanted to end it. There was a scene in the script that depicted a Robert Englund Freddy nightmare. So it would have been Robert Englund's nightmare in the film, like how Nancy Thomas has nightmares in the film. We would have seen his nightmare, and it would have been, the nightmare would have had Robert stuck in a spider-like web, and Freddy was a giant spider, described as a giant black widow with the red symbol under the belly, having red and green stripes. This was dropped because it didn't fit with the film's overall tone, but according to Englund, it was due to budget issues, which I can completely see, because that does not seem like it doesn't fit with the film's overall tone. Honestly, I could see it coming like either like right before he disappears or something, or like as he like when she's trying, like we see his nightmare, like he like wakes up from the stream, and then like Nancy's trying to get a hold of him, and then she can't find him anywhere. That's when it would be like, oh shit, wait. And what would have been cool, like towards the end too, like a callback, like you just see this web like in the background in the scene. That would have been kind of cool, because it would have been like, okay, well, obviously he has Robert Englund in there, or well, Freddy has Robert Englund. Ooh, I mean, the Freddy entity thing has Robert Englund, the thing, in his web, and that's where he's been. That would have been cool. I don't know. I do think it's what Robert Englund said. It's probably due to budget. Winona Ryder and Drew Barrymore were both considered for the role of Julie. Both actresses turned it down due to prior commitments with other projects. Ryder had previously auditioned for the role of Kristen in a Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, which that would have been interesting to have Winona Ryder as Kristen. It would have been a little bit different. I wonder if she would have gone blonde for that, like in Edward Scissorhands. That would have been a little different. Playing a different character for her. And then Wes Craven would later direct Drew Barrymore in Scream just a couple years later. So that's kind of cool. Honestly, I like that. She like got a hold of him and was like, I want to be in this role. Or they were like considered for the role. And then she turned it down. And then later Wes Craven would be like, hey, I got this role. It's going to be a little bit different. We're going to promote you heavily. But that's kind of like the psycho of it all. And, you kind of do that kind of bait and switch where we think she's the main character. She's not. What? Oh, it turns out she's just meant to be killed off in the beginning of the film. And then the rest of the film would be Neve Campbell and her friends. And the rest is history with Scream. Kill Counter. We arrived at the second kill counter, where we go through the kills and deaths in the film. In the 7th installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street, there are a total of 5 kills. Kind of light in kills, so let's get through them. The first deaths come when the Claw, which was only a prop a minute ago, comes to life and starts maiming and killing the special effects crew, Chuck, who's stabbed in the throat, and Terry, whose chest is pricked with the finger knives. Then, worried about Dylan, Heather asks Chase to come home. However, Chase falls asleep at the wheel on the way and dies supposedly in a car crash. When Heather goes to identify the body, it seems to her that there may have been more than meets the eye to this crash, as was made apparent by the claw-like marks on his chest. After another episode from Dylan, Heather finally takes him to the hospital. Julie, Dylan's babysitter, shows up at the hospital and tells Heather she had a nightmare about him. Heather leaves to get Dylan's stuffed animal, and two nurses, Helen and June, try to sedate Dylan, but Julie has been instructed by Heather to not let Dylan fall asleep. Helen is able to get a needle in Dylan, and Julie ends up punching June in her face and threatening Helen with the needle, and locks the door. Dylan drifts to sleep, and Freddy appears in the locked hospital room and brutally slays Julie, just like Tina in the first film. June and Helen unlock the door and discover the murder in progress. Lastly, Freddy lures Dylan into a trap and tries to attack him vigorously. Heather discovers the battle and fights off Freddy, but Freddy makes his tongue extend and wrap around her face. Dylan gets out of the trap to save Heather by taking a large kitchen knife that she brought in with her. Stabbing Freddy's tongue and making it back to its previous size, the two succeed in killing Freddy by locking him in a lit furnace, whereupon catching on fire, in a Hansel and Gretel-like ending, his true visage is shown amidst a fiery blast. And that's how we end with a nightmare, Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. In 2008, Michael Bay and his Platinum Dunes production company set out to reboot the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with a remake of the original 1984 film. Producer Brad Fuller explained that their approach would mirror the one used in their Friday the 13th remake, focusing on stripping away elements that made the series less frightening over the years, particularly Freddy Krueger's trademark humor. The goal was to create a truly horrifying movie. Fuller noted that while the film would be a remake, it would incorporate character deaths and dream sequences from across the entire series. Samuel Bayer was brought on board to direct in February 2009. According to New Line production chief Toby Emmerich, Michael Bay strongly advocated for Bayer due to his talent for capturing seductive and unsettling imagery, which Bay believed would make the remake a fresh and visually striking experience. Bayer initially declined Platinum Dunes' offer twice, but ultimately accepted after Bay personally reached out to explain the unique business opportunity. In a June 2009 interview, Wes Craven, who directed the original film, was not consulted for the remake, expressed his dissatisfaction with the project. Conversely, Robert Englund, who portrayed Freddy throughout the series, welcomed the remake. Englund appreciated the opportunity to exploit the dreamscape with modern CGI and technologies unavailable when Craven made the original film. Bayer felt that his version would pay homage to Craven's 1984 film, but did not replicate it entirely. He recognized Craven's attempt to infuse the character with deeper meaning and aimed to bring that essence to a new generation with a fresh take on the character and story. Fuller and Vorm viewed the new film as a reimagining rather than a straightforward remake, drawing a parallel to their 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They noted that while their Friday the 13th remake embraced a fun, high-energy tone, A Nightmare on Elm Street would adopt a different, more serious tone. Form explained, "I think a Friday the 13th movie like we made was really fun. You know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think a Nightmare movie is not that." When asked why New Line was rebooting the Nightmare on Elm Street series, Emmerich explained, "The Nightmare films are profoundly disturbing on a deep human level because they're about our dreams. It's why we thought that we could reach an especially broad audience with a new film, since the feeling of having our dreams invaded translates to any country and culture. Bayer aimed to create a film set in a darker world that would prompt audiences to question what makes a monster, whether it's the monster's physical appearance or something deeper within." Wesley Strick was initially hired to write the script for the remake, impressing Emmerich with a prequel script he had written for the 1995 film Seven. Eric Hessier was later brought in to revise Strick's script before production began. By the time Banger joined the project, the script reflected the combined efforts of Strick and Hessier, but still needed to be tinkered with. Banger explained that the script delved deeper into Freddy's backstory and how he became the monster he was. Unlike the Friday the 13th remake, which drew from the first 4 films, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake focused solely on the original film. Freddy was returned to his darker roots, with Fuller noting that while this Freddy didn't have one-liners, they came from a darker sense of humor, and were not intended to be as campy as the previous sequels. To keep the story fresh and avoid repetitive dream sequences, Hessier introduced the concept of micro-naps, which allowed for a blurring of reality and dream worlds and added new layers of suspense.
You open this door, Kruger! What do you think I did? I didn't go in there!
I'm having these dreams, and there's this man, and he's burned.
Don't fall asleep.
Never sleep again.
You have nothing to worry about. This won't hurt one little bit.
At a diner one night, Dean Russell, played by Kellen Lutz, falls asleep and is attacked by a burned man wearing a bladed gardener's glove on his right hand. In the dream, the burned man cuts Dean's throat. In reality, Dean cuts his own throat as his friends Chris Foles and Nancy Holbrook look on in horror. Chris and Nancy are played by Katie Cassidy and Rooney Mara, respectively. Chris sees a photograph of her and Dean as children at Dean's funeral, but cannot recall knowing Dean before high school. She begins to have nightmares about the burned man and refuses to go to sleep for fear that she will die like Dean. Accompanied by her ex-boyfriend Jesse Braun, played by Tom Stecker, Chris falls asleep and is brutally murdered by the burned man. Covered in Chris's blood, Jesse runs to Nancy's house and learns that Nancy has been having nightmares about the same man, Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is now played by Jackie Earle Haley. Jesse is arrested under suspicion of murdering Chris and is killed by Krueger in his jail cell. As her friends die, Nancy questions everyone's connection to each other, given that none of them can remember each other before their teenage years. Nancy and her friend Quentin Smith, played by Kyle Gallner, discover that they attended the same preschool. Nancy's mother Gwen, she's played by Connie Britton, reluctantly tells them about Kruger, the preschool's groundskeeper who was accused of molesting the children, including Nancy, who was his favorite. Gwen alerted the other parents, including Quentin's father Alan, played by Clancy Brown, but Kruger escaped. Believing there is more to the story, Nancy attempts to track down the remaining kids from the school, but discovers that all of them have been killed. Only she and Quentin are left. Meanwhile, Quentin falls asleep and sees a flashback to the parents, led by Alan, hunting Kruger down and burning him alive. As a result of their insomnia, Nancy and Quentin have sporadic microsleeps and become hypnagogic, causing them to hallucinate. To try to stop Kruger, they go to the preschool. On the way, Nancy is attacked by Kruger, during which she pulls a piece of his sweater out and brings it to reality. Quentin takes Nancy to the hospital, where he steals adrenaline to help them stay awake. At the preschool, the two find proof of Kruger's crimes, including crude photos. Kruger, now a ghost, wants revenge on the kids for disclosing his abuse. Nancy decides to pull Kruger out of the dream world, like she did his sweater, and kill him. Quentin and Nancy both fall asleep and are attacked. As Kruger goes after Nancy, her cries awaken Quentin, who uses the adrenaline to wake her. Nancy pulls Kruger with her into reality. She manages to slit his neck before torching the room with his body inside. Police, however, are unable to find Kruger's remains. After Nancy and her mother return home, Kruger appears in the mirror's reflection and kills her mother, pulling her body through the mirror as Nancy screams. Now let's move on to the last part of our trivia of the film A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010 and learn some stuff about the behind the scenes stuff, the production, and like the actors. So Jackie Earle Haley was initially apprehensive about playing Freddy, as he was intimidated by playing a character that he felt was really owned by another actor, obviously Robert Englund. However, the idea of playing Freddy excited him so much that he decided to accept the role. Which, honestly, I think it was a pretty good idea. I think Jackie Earle Haley, after seeing him as Rorschach in Watchmen, I think he does a really good job. I think in this, he absolutely does do a pretty good job. I think, and we'll get into more with my final thoughts, I just think it was the wrong. I think it goes to the directing, because the actors, I think overall did a pretty okay job, but for the most part, it's just like it falls flat with like the CGI, with the direction, with just like the tone and the look of it, and it's just that it's just like it's got that like 2010 like remake feel about it. It's just everything about it just kind of but. I mean, honestly, like I said, Jackie Earle Haley, I think, is a good choice to replace Robert Englund in this film to play Freddy Krueger. I think he does a pretty good job. I mean, he's not as, I think, I don't think Robert Englund's that tall, but I know that Jackie Earle Haley's not tall at all. I know that they had to do some stuff to make him look a little bit taller. And I think that's a little bit of like a misstep. I think they should have gotten someone a little bit more intimidating. Maybe someone a little bit. I think someone long and lanky would have been like a perfect. If Jackie Earle Haley was long and lanky, I think would have worked perfectly fine. And I think I don't know. I'm gonna save a lot of this. I'm gonna save it for the final thoughts. Samuel Bayer, who made a name as the director of commercials and music videos, turned down the offer to direct twice. He previously turned down several other Platinum Dunes films, including the Amityville Horror and Friday the 13th. He relented after receiving a long email from producer Michael Bay, who said that doing the film would really open up his career opportunities. Following the extreme backlash to this movie, Bayer has not directed another feature film, and that's as of last year, 2023. Good, because I hate to say it, but sometimes people are fit for what they do. I think him as a director of commercials, music videos, I think he works perfectly well. There's some people who, they edit trailers and they edit like commercials, they edit music videos, and that's what they're suited to do. And you don't bring them in to re-edit your whole film like they did with Suicide Squad, and that's why that whole movie opens like it's a trailer with, I think, I don't even know how many different songs. It's like 11 or 12. It's a lot of different songs, one after another. But yeah, like, I don't know what Michael Bay saw in his commercials and music videos that he was just like, yes, he has to direct this. Yeah, I gotta bring him in. It's me, Michael Bay. I know what I'm talking about. Honestly, I think, I don't know. I don't know who else directed some of this other stuff, but like the Amityville Horror is not good. It's not great. That movie is not good. This one too, just like it's that same thing where like Halloween 5, where Dominic Ozenjar, or what was his name? I forgot his name. He's just like they have such a distinct way of doing things that I don't think it worked really well. Especially when you're coming in with something so well known. Like if you're gonna remake something, I wish they would have gone like the Child's Play route. I'll talk about it later about what I mean on that. But I don't think Samuel Bayer was a good choice at all to bring in as a director. So Billy Bob Thornton and Steve Buscemi were considered to play Freddy Krueger for this film. And honestly, you know what? See, going back to that, I think Billy Bob Thornton may have been a pretty good, Freddy Krueger, a replacement for Robert Englund. I honestly, like, Steve Buscemi would have been a little weird. He does seem like someone who could come off as a creep, but he's done so many roles where it's like he starts off creepy, but then it's just, he turns into like that lovable guy. That's when I would be like, no, I don't see it, Steve. But Billy Bob Thornton, I really can see like him being this kind of methodical, quiet guy who's just sitting there, and you're like, and he kind of looks at the kids like this kind of disgusting gaze, and it's just like, hey, can you not look at our kids like that? He's like, yeah, I don't look at your kids, no way. And he kind of gets a little upset for it, and it's kind of like that, like kind of Bad Santa-esque coming out, and then that's when he's like, yeah, they killed me because I was touching them kids, and he's like got the knife fingers. Man, that might have worked, honestly. The Blu-ray actually contains several deleted scenes that you can view in full, as well as which you can briefly glimpse, and that are glimpsed in other special features. The deleted material includes an alternate opening, the burn patient, who's obviously Freddy Krueger, painfully dying in a hospital, Dean's alternate death, Chris hosts a garden party in which ends with Dean falling to his death, Krueger confronting Chris in his candlelit lair, Krueger as Chris taunts Nancy as she drowns in the blood-flooded hallway. Alternate final sequence, Quentin encounters Krueger in a dilapidated church. Additional footage of Freddy killing one of the Elm Street parents in a bedroom dream sequence, and an alternate ending of Freddy bursting from a sleeping Quentin. I don't know, none of that really sounds too like, oh, that would have changed everything. That would have made everything so much better. I don't know. There's so much to this that I'm just like, I just wish if they had remade it, Platinum Dunes hadn't done it. I wish New Line would have come in and been like, hey, we've seen what you've done with most of your remakes, and they kind of suck. You kind of give them this kind of like they all have this weird, like, grimy, like, undertone that it's just, like, maybe it's just, like, the 2000s, like, that era, like, from the, like that, like, emo, you know, scene, kind of, like, but it just, like, everything just looks like, and it kind of carries over from, I think, the remake of Texas Chainsaw, and I'll talk about it more later. I know I keep saying that, and I always do that though, where I'm like, I'll talk about it later. But there's nothing really here that it just makes me like, ooh, maybe that would have been like, oh yeah, maybe that would have helped it a little bit. There really isn't anything here that I can see that I'm like, well, meh, nothing. Kill counter. Now we've arrived at the last and third kill counter. Now let's go through the kills and deaths one last time. In this 8th installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, we again have 4 kills. Not too many in this installment. Let's look at the kills. First up, we see Dean falling asleep at the table, and he meets a man covered in burn scars, wearing a red and green sweater and a clawed glove on his hand. The burned man cuts Dean's throat in the dream, but in reality, what we see is that Dean is cutting his own throat as his friends look on. Wow, nobody tried to stop him? Second, Chris begins to dream about the burned man herself and refuses to go to sleep for fear that she will die in her dreams. Jesse Braun, Chris's ex-boyfriend, shows up at her house to keep her company while she sleeps, but Chris meets the burned man in her dreams, and she too is murdered. Then Jesse is apprehended by the police under suspicion of murdering Chris, and he's killed by Freddy when he falls asleep in his jail cell. He is impaled through the back with his finger knives. After everything, Nancy and her mother return home from the hospital, with Nancy being told she would get some sleep. She should get some sleep. Krueger suddenly appears in a mirror's reflection and kills Nancy's mother before pulling her body through the mirror while Nancy screams. And those are the final kills and deaths for this film. And I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm going out with like a whimper. Okay, so since 2010, we really haven't seen anything come from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Although the horror world is abuzz with the recent merger of indie horror powerhouse Blumhouse and the prolific Atomic Monster, the label of genre icon James Wan. Together, they've announced a new and intriguing project that's set to make waves, scheduled for release in 2026. This mysterious feature film has already got horror fans on edge, particularly with the involvement of acclaimed director Lee Cronin and his production company Doppelgangers. Cronin, known for Evil Dead Rise, will be joining forces with Blumhouse and Atomic Monster in what he describes as a collaboration with the overlords of horror. Cronin expressed his excitement via Deadline, saying, "I'm super excited to be gathering up my gang of oddballs from Doppelgangers to join forces with the overlords of horror at Blumhouse and Atomic Monster." He also hinted at a project that's wickedly entertaining and terrifying, set to hit theaters April 17th, 2026. James Wan praised Cronen's talent, noting, "Lee is a gifted filmmaker in the world of horror whose storytelling has electrified audiences. We're excited to collaborate with him on this project and to bring viewers on a wildly entertaining ride." Meanwhile, Blumhouse founder Jason Blum added, "Lee's work is always fresh and surprising, and he has an intriguing modern take on something quite ancient that I think audiences will love. But what's got fans buzzing isn't just the impressive lineup. Some have been piecing together clues and speculate that this new project could be a new installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise." The use of the word nightmares by Cronin and the involvement of New Line Cinema, the studio famously associated with Freddy Krueger, have sparked hopes for a return to Elm Street. The notion of a new Nightmare on Elm Street film is enticing, especially after the 2010 remake starring Jackie Earle Haley left many fans disappointed. The film forced producer Platinum Dunes out of the horror remake business amid criticism. The idea of revisiting Elm Street after a 15-year hiatus offers a tantalizing chance for redemption. However, there are hurdles to consider, such as resolving rights issues with Wes Craven's estate. Blumhouse's description of Cronen's script as a modern take on something quite ancient could suggest a fresh take on the genre, rather than a direct revival of Freddy. While Freddy might not be considered ancient by some, the series' lore indicates that the forces behind him are indeed timeless. Whether this project ends up being a fresh take or a return to familiar horror, it's clear that the merger of Blumhouse and Atomic Monster is bringing something big to the table, and fans will be watching closely as this potential new chapter in horror unfolds. And honestly, I really hope that it is either something new, or if they're going to do another Nightmare, give us one big send-off. Maybe bring some things back. Get Robert Englund back for one last time and one last ride, right? For how about The Nightmare on Elm Street, or something, or The Nightmare or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Where he has to, where a new group of team of Dream Warriors have to come together to fight Freddy Krueger one last time, because he's got one last chance to come back and wreak havoc or something. I don't know, something crazy, right? Make it so that there is a time bomb, right? Where it's he's only got this one last chance to do it. This is gonna be it, and then there's no more. And it would be a good send off, especially for Robert Englund, who, he started off the role, and now here we are. God, what is it now? 40 years later, and you just give him one big send off at the end, and that's God, it'd be so crazy. I honestly, I'm not sure that it's gonna be Nightmare on Elm Street. I could see it being something completely different and something out of the left field or something else. But just that little hope of maybe we'll get one last Nightmare on Elm Street, and it'll be good. And it'll make up for, the terrible remake, the terrible ending with him being dead or killing him off. Because New Nightmare wasn't that bad. But yeah, guys, let's hope for the best for the future for A Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe they do remake it again, but we get something that's actually going to stick. But here's to the Dream Master. All right, so now it's time for my final thoughts. So let's just start off with Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare, Freddy's Dead, whatever it's called. Honestly, I remember seeing this as a kid, and I remember, Freddy has a daughter. I remember like all the even wackier things. This is the Freddy I remember because I was born in 1990. So for me, growing up, my Nightmare on Elm Street was actually going to be the next one we're going to talk about. But I remember seeing this one. I don't remember watching as much like the Dream from. I remember watching the very first one a lot, and because that's the one that like my mom, she loved that one. And then I didn't watch this. I didn't even know that there was, like, I knew there was a second one, but I never knew what it was about for the longest time. It's so weird because it's like that one and like Halloween 3, and it's just these like odd ones out. Like there's some after like some Friday the 13th too, where it's just like I didn't know about for the longest time until like years later. And I went back and like with Halloween 3, I went back and I watched it, and I didn't really like it to begin with. And over time, I started to like it, and now I love it. I can see what they were trying to do. I see what they were trying to get at with it. But it just kind of sucks that it kind of failed. And even with Freddy, what is it? Freddy's Back, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I can see what they were trying to do with that and with like the gay overtones of that film. But I remember seeing it years later and being like, okay, it's very gay, but it never was like became my favorite. And I saw I remember I did watch Dream Warriors as a kid, and I was like, yeah, this one's pretty good because it did rest or like save in my mind like always like that the puppet part where he like has him on the strings and stuff and like smashing her head in the TV, and then after that it just was like until we get to I just remember like the Freddy's Dead like there's just so much like comical stuff just thrown in like with Roseanne and Tom Arnold, just things that are like too much pop culture-y stuff that really dates it for when it is. And unfortunately, I get what they were trying to do too. Like this is the very tail end of 3D. And it's like, man, you're trying to capitalize on something that's already gone out of style by this point. And honestly, it just doesn't work for the film. I understand what they were trying to do. Like, 3D, like the 3 dimensions and the dream. And, now you'll be able to hurt him or something or pull him out. And I don't know. It's just like it's that thing where after a while, like you have to keep coming up with new things, new reasons why, and then like you have to either wipe the slate clean and say like, well, those powers weren't real, or that didn't actually occur to them to use that or to do that to kill them. You know what I mean? Like, where. Like the power to go into other people's dreams. It's like we've seen that before. It's like, but because the other ones don't count, now that's like a new power that somebody has that they think they have, and it doesn't work. It didn't work. Freddy got them. I don't know. I think overall, like here and there, I just remember like learning about Freddy's past. Honestly, like. Learning about how he was abused and stuff, and how he's like the sadomasochist, and like how he tortured his wife and stuff, and then like having like a little kid too, like makes it like like that stuff makes it like more sinister, but the way that they did it just doesn't work because everything else is just played as silly and like, now we're gonna kill Freddy, guys. Let's have a funeral for Freddy, guys. I don't know. To me, it's not the best one in the franchise. I'll probably rank them too, really quick. Once I get done, once I get to the end of my final thoughts. But let's move on to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Honestly, I love this one. I remember being a kid watching it, and at first, like, as a kid, I didn't really like it because it's because I didn't get it, because I was a dumb little kid who, you know, what you were going, see, as a kid, you're going there for like Dream Warriors, for her, like Dream Master, Dream Child, Freddy's Dead, all this other stuff, right? And then when you get this more cerebral thing where Heather Langenkamp is Nancy, but she's not actually Nancy, it's only because this entity that's called Freddy Krueger, only because it took on the shape of, or the likeness of Freddy Krueger because of Wes Craven and what Wes Craven was writing, and how it's all this like meta-ness to it, and like, cause the reason too was like, oh, why does he just die in the end with like in the boiler and this and that? It's like, oh, it makes more sense now because it's like a fairy tale. It's like Hansel and Gretel. It's like Grimm's fairy tales. It makes so much more sense now, you know, just and like what it precursed to what he would do with Scream. It's just, you can just see everything here is later. He's like, okay, let's just do that then. There, bam. And works just so well. I mean, the design of Freddy Krueger is more, I think, upsetting, because it's like, I can see where he's going for it, and it's like, yeah, like, you want, like, it's like you're seeing more of what happened, like, to this, like, and I know that they wanted to do more with the makeup, but they were like, ew, if we go too far, you're not even going to be able to look at it. And I think the idea of actually having the claws coming out of his hands it's a good idea, but I think it like comes off kind of cheesy. I think it works because of the meta-ness of the film, and that's why I think. Oh, I think I forgot to say. I think I'm going to give 2 stars to Final Nightmare, the Freddy's Dead, and then honestly, I think I got to give it either 4 or 5 stars for Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because, man, this movie is just, like, so good. Like, there's just things that I just didn't get as a kid that it, like, makes so much more sense. And then I love the idea of, like, his stuffed animal is the one that's keeping it a bit, because it's essentially like like the boogeyman kind of thing, where, like, because the kid's imagination of the dinosaur is able to fight back against the entity that is coming from the imagination, and but gosh, it's like, when you, like, the further you think about it, it's like, man, Wes Craven was just such a great writer and great director. Like, it's so sad that he passed away so soon. I'm just glad we got a lot of films from him. We got a lot of great films, and this is just one of them. This one's so good. Now let's just get into the very stinky, the very grimy, the very ugly Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010, the remake. Not good. I'm just going to tell you right now. Honestly, I really, I try and watch it too, because I remember, because there's some movies where, like, if they're on, you'll put them on, and even if they're not, like, the best, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I can watch this. This is one that I just actively avoid. Like, Friday the 13th, the remake, I think they did a pretty solid, like, okay job with that, because what they did was they took the first 4, kind of remade them really quickly for the beginning, and then gave you a new story after that. And they made Jason more like this hulking, more like faster, like monster, like this beast, and that's really what you want to see from Jason, really. I mean, some of the characters are a little dumb. It's got that 2020, like, I don't know, early 2010s, late 2000s, like into like the mid, like the early 2010s. It's just like that feel of like, why does everybody look like this? Why do they look like they don't shower? They look like they all look like they're just like from the same high school. They all have like bleach hair, or spiky hair, or long hair, or puka shell necklaces, or they just look like the typical like, oh, I'm a scene kid, or oh, I'm a preppy kid, or oh, I'm the goth girl, or I'm the uptight princess girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's just everybody just looks the same. It's just it really upsets me, because it's like you couldn't do something different. I get that that's like the style of the kids nowadays, but like, please, anything else with this. I'm so glad we're not in that era anymore. But anyways, poor Jackie Earle Haley. I think he does a really good job. I think for what he's given and what he was told to do, I think he does a pretty good, solid job of being kind of menacing, but also like he's using these quips to be more like taunting. But everyone else is just, why Rooney Mara? Like, she just looks like she doesn't want to be there. Everybody else, like, it's just, God, I don't know why you would. It's that same thing too. Like, why would you get this director who's never directed a film, who you just seen direct like some commercials, some music videos, and I do understand, like, sometimes that does translate into like a good film, but I think you should have let him. Honestly, I think you should have let him do something of his own first, and see what he did with that, and then when you do the Nightmare on Elm Street, you bring in somebody else to kind of rein him in, kind of tell him like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do CGI on Freddy this whole time like this. Maybe we should go practical. I don't know. That's me. I gotta give this film 1 star. I really don't like it that much. I think, and here's where we'll just start my ranking. Out of all of them, I think this is my least favorite. But let me get into my rankings right now. Alright, so let's just get straight into the rankings. As I stated, starting at the bottom. We're going to start from the bottom, work our way to the best one. So here we go. Like I said, Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. Just not a great film, not a great remake. Honestly, I think what they could have done is, like I said, I kind of mentioned earlier, with Child's Play, because they didn't have the rights to remake the original one, like, full out remake it, because they couldn't make sequels to the idea of, like he possesses it with magic, the doll, so they had to do like the AI, like the buddy with an eye, and it's like evil AI come to life. I think that works pretty well for Child's Play, honestly, and I think that could have worked here. Like, maybe you could have done something a little bit different. Like, maybe like Freddy Krueger is still like, I don't know, the groundskeeper, or Willie. Maybe he's the teacher. Maybe he's like the principal. I don't know. Like, switch it up. Maybe he's just some guy that like lives in the neighborhood who, like, he's that weird guy, and like, yeah, like you could have totally sympathize with them from the beginning too, where they're like, oh, he was that weird guy who lived down the street, and like the kids liked him, but like we didn't like him. I don't know, there's so many different things that you could have done too with it, but they just, I feel like, Platinum Dooms and Michael Bay, it's just all of it just sounds terrible. Next up, I would say, is probably Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare, because honestly, there's not really too much to this. I kind of said what I said, where it's like there's not a lot going on. There's not that many kills or deaths or anything like that. Like, there's so much like quipping and pop culture references that you're just like, come on, let's just get through this, please. And then like the 3D stuff, and like I said, there's some interesting things, like with the backstory and this and that. But it's an interesting idea too. That like, man, you killed all the kids in Springwood, wow. But other than that, like, it just doesn't work. Now moving up to my 6th place is A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. It's not that long of a film. It's really cut down to like give you as little as possible. They were trying really hard to aim at that R, like that soft R, where they could get away with some stuff. There's some pretty good practical effects, I will give it that. But other than that, this film's really forgettable. The only thing that makes it stand out to me is that, like, you know, it's an interesting idea of having like the baby. You know, there's parts where the baby's dreaming, so it still affects her because the baby's inside of her. So if she's still being affected by these dreams that the baby's having, or the nightmare that the baby's having, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Other than that, it's, like I said, pretty forgettable. Now moving up to number 6, we got Dream Master. That's the Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And this one too is just kind of forgettable. It kind of sucks that we kill off. Was it Kristen? That's Patricia Arquette? Well, in this one it's Tuesday night. But she does a good job taking over for her, and we're introduced to Alice in this one. But again, it's just like we keep introducing these characters from the previous one to just either kill them off or, you know, make them irrelevant later. So it's, I don't know. It's strange. It's, like I said, again, it's another one of the forgettable ones. Yeah. Next up, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. There's a lot of, like, things in here, imagery that's very like, whoa, I didn't know you could get away with that. And it's very, very overtly sexual and homosexual in that. And I feel like there's a lot of men out there who saw this, or maybe, I don't know, maybe women, but that were like, oh yeah, yep, I'm totally gay. That's exactly what I do with my friends. I don't know, right? But it's just this one too. It's like, I like the design of Fred. I like that when, like, there's like some cool prosthetic stuff and cool effects. Like when he peels back the top of his skull and you see his brain. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, and like him coming out of Jesse. Like, I mean, it's obviously this kind of metaphor, but it's still not the best, but you know what? It's leading into those like really, really good ones. It's a unique one, and for over the years, it's gotten better and better to me, like as a great like sequel, and just like a great like queer horror. It's just, it works so well. I love now. I really like it. I like it a lot. And then next we got Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. And like I said, I kind of gushed about this one a little bit earlier, but this was just so good. So this is number 3, and my top. Well, obviously they're ranked for 8 of them. Number 3 spot, New Nightmare. Deserves it. Introduces everybody to this meta-ness that we like I said, we get later with Scream. I love, like I said, like some of the, like, the design's okay. I think like having him in the trench coat is kind of cool. I think I wish they would have maybe muted the green a little bit more. like in the hat, like I maybe made it brown. Like I think it comes off as like a green, like a felty green, like a dirty felty green. But it's I wish it would be like brown. But other than that, like I said, like this whole meta story of Wes Craven writing a story about Wes Craven writing a story about the entity that's come to life that takes on the form of Freddy Krueger, and Robert Englund disappears. John Saxon starts thinking he's Heather Langenkamp's father, and that she's Nancy, and then she has to go into this, like, basically like the witch's lair, and Hansel and Gretel push her into the fire to win. And yeah, this is a pretty good one. If you haven't seen this one and you've heard about it, honestly, really check it out. If you're new to like Nightmare on Elm Street, I would say probably watch the first one first. Then maybe watch the next one I'm going to talk about, and then this one, which at our second spot, I know. I still think this is my opinion. I think Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is a solid number 2. Dream Warriors, it's so good. Like when I watched it the other day, it still holds up. Nancy comes back and you're cheering, and you're like, yes, here she is to help them. She's doing the best she can. She shows them that they got these powers, and that Kristen has these powers to bring them all together. And the warriors, and they're getting ready to take on Freddy because their friends keep dying. And there's this the nurse who's antagonistic, and you know they're like, I get that, like it's like, man, she's just trying to help them too. But then there's just like so many memorable scenes, like I said, when he's like being puppeted around. It's just, God. This movie is just it's like it's number 2. It's so good. But unfortunately, I gotta put it number 1. A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the original one. It's Wes Craven at Wes Craven's finest. It's the original story. It's Robert Englund as he's starting off as Freddy. There's things in here that are like chilling and disturbing, and like have always made me, you know, like there's the scene where they're like, it's not even Freddy doing it. It's just the scene where they're like talking, and he's trying to talk to his mom, and like when they're at Tina's house and they're staying the night, and it's Glenn, Nancy, and Tina, and like they hear that from outside in the backyard, and they go to investigate. It's like, why would you go and investigate? And that's so creepy to go out there, and like Glenn's trying to be like the man, and like, hey, who's out there? And it's just like, why are you going? And then it just turns out to be her boyfriend. I forgot what his name is. And it's just, that to me has always been like so scary. I don't know why. It's just, I remember watching it as like a kid, and that just, to me, just thinking about like, you hear a sound outside, and it's just like, what is it? What is that sound? What's that noise? Who's back there? And you go to check, and no one's there. But then, like, his name Rod. I think his name's Rod. And then he comes out of nowhere, and he just scares them all. And then there's just like, there's the way the makeup looks. It's so great. It's just like this kind of, like, obviously it's not refined yet to what we see later, but it works on so many levels of like, if this is the first one you're seeing, it's gonna scare you. It's gonna make you. It's gonna imprint in your mind of like, that's Freddy Krueger right there. Like when he cuts off his fingers, when his arms are all long and scratching the wall as he goes, and then just the opening scene too of just him building the knife fingers, just how simple it is, and even with the weird ending, you know, with them wanting him to do this, him wanting to do that. I get it, right? it's always someone's gonna interfere with something, but I think it works to the idea of this being a dream the whole time too, and obviously it would end in this kind of dreamlike way. God, this movie is so good, and I'm so glad that it sparked this franchise. It really has quite a few duds, at least in my opinion. I was never fully into like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. When I did, so the franchise that I love the most, that I can go back and watch all the way through, and just I love it, know like the back of my hand, is Halloween. So for me, Halloween, like Michael Myers, I can tell you about all of that. Then after that, it was I don't know, it was kind of like a tie between, all the other ones, because I really didn't really get into like the franchises as much, but I think I'd seen most of these over the Friday the 13th. But now that I had gone through and I watched all the Friday the 13th, and I've like done that whole retrospective, go back and check that out. I did all the Friday the 13th, except for one. There's one, and there's one here, one Final Nightmare too. Hold on, I'm gonna get to it, guys. But I did all the Friday the 13th, and you know what? I'm like heavily invested in that now too. I'm like, I love Jason. Jason's awesome. Like, there's so many. It's so crazy because there's 12 films, so many different films to pick, and with this, it's like I just wish there was maybe like one or two more just thrown in there to give you a little bit more variety. Maybe we could have seen Freddy do this, Freddy do that, Freddy go to space, maybe Freddy go under the ocean. I don't know. So he really doesn't have one where it's like that really out there crazy one. But I'm glad we're here at the end finally for a Nightmare on Elm Street. But there is one final one, guys, and I think you all know what it is. You guys have been waiting for this since I started doing the Friday the 13th one, and I said that I was gonna do it as part of that, but then I took it out because I was like, you know what, I gotta do a Nightmare on Elm Street before I do this. So there's one film that is a crossover, and we talked about it in Jason Goes to Hell, the final the final Friday, just like this one. So that one I think came out right after this one, after Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare. New Line had they finally had both under one house. They had Freddy Krueger and they had Jason Voorhees. And guys, in the next episode, we're going to see them go head to head. Finally. And you know what? It took years for them to come together, guys. But they finally did it back in the early, mid 2000s. They brought them together. They brought Freddy and Jason together. Freddy versus Jason. And we're going to finally get to that in the next episode. And we'll finally tie everything up all together. And then from there, maybe I'll talk about which I think is better. Friday the 13th or A Nightmare on Elm Street. Who knows? Is Freddy going to be coming out as the champion? Is Jason going to come out swinging and decapitate Freddy and get him take his crown off? Huh? Or is somebody going to come in and sneak in and take that crown away from both of them? Someone like Ghostface? I don't know. I'm just joking, guys. But for reals, though, that's going to be the next episode. So we'll see, who is the winner? Who's the best? We're going to see these two titans duke it out. But for now, did you like that Freddy returned only to be killed off? What did you think about a meta nightmare film? Did Jackie Earle Haley do a good job? Yeah, but that movie still sucked. We want to thank you all for listening, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any personal or fictional, paranormal, supernatural, or unexplainable stories? We'd love to read them on the podcast. Please send your stories, recommendations, or anything else to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to show more support, you can follow our socials on Instagram, Threads, or TikTok @horrorboxpodcast. Also, you can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It really helps out. Until next time, keep your nightmares close and your fears closer. This is Dom, signing off from the Horrorbox.
Happy Father's Day.
Come on, guys! Hurry! Get out of here! Come on!
Kids.
Freddy's dead.